The main issues of this war between England and France in the 14th and 15th centuries were the succession to the French throne, commercial interests, and mutual displays of power. The struggle lasted for several generations, and according to the general consensus of historians, began in 1337 and ended in 1453, i.e., 116 years. However, the struggle for England's territories on the French mainland dates back to the 12th century. In the early 1300s, France was the richest, largest, and most populous kingdom in Western Europe, while England was the most developed and closest Western European state to France. Therefore, it was the country most likely to rival France in terms of power. Interestingly, however, the two countries were related before the war. Edward III, King of England in 1327, and Charles V, King of France at the time, were now uncle and nephew. However, when Charles V died in 1328, he had no children to succeed him, so power in France passed from the House of Capet to the House of Valois. King Edward III of England did not recognize the new King Philip VI of France and claimed the throne of France, which strained ties between the two countries. In 1328, the Scots declared their independence from England, and King Philip VI of France supported the Scots, while the King of England incited the French-dominated Flemish cities of Anvers, Gand, Bruges, and Valavani for independence, which brought the enmity between the two countries to the limit. The 100 Years' War began with small skirmishes at sea. Both countries began to sink or harass each other's ships on sight. England did not put land wars on its agenda until 1340. In 1340, King Philip of England changed his mind and allied himself with the Holy Roman Empire, taking his cities behind him. Meanwhile, the English fleet completely destroyed the French fleet, reinforced by Castile and Genoa at Sulis Bay on June 24, 1340. This allowed troops and supplies to be transported to the continent. However, the English still failed to land. Unable to make progress in attacks from the north, England decided to move from its own territory in the west of the continent. In 1345, from Gascony, Bouillon attacked and defeated the French army, taking Lavoie from the French. This encouraged Edward III, and he himself landed at Cotentin, entered Normandy, took the Seine, and started marching towards Paris. The King of France led his army against the English near Cherches-in-Fontaine, but the French army was heavily defeated, in the battle losing many towns in the process. The British army then laid siege to Calais, and the French were forced to surrender Calais to the British after little resistance. The King of England replaced the French he had expelled from the city with the British, creating an advantage for his later attacks. During the siege of Calais, at the instigation of the King of France, Scotland entered English territory and occupied some of it. King Edward III returned to his country and counterattacked with his army. While the Scots were forced to retreat in the face of this attack, the King of Scotland was captured by the English, and later, in 1356, England succeeded in establishing complete sovereignty over Scotland. The outbreak of the Black Plague during these years put both France and England in financial difficulties. As the war came to a standstill due to the death of soldiers in the army from the plague, the two countries had to make a temporary truce after a while. King Philip VI of France died in 1350 and was succeeded by his son Jean II. After a gap of about 10 years, in 1355, Prince Edward attacked Poitiers and won a great victory, capturing the new King of France, Jean II. The English took the captive King of France to England and forced him to sign the Treaty of London. When this treaty, which envisaged the cession of vast territories to the Kingdom of England, was not recognized by France, the British besieged Ramsey in order to realize this by force. However, the English were unsuccessful in the face of the strong resistance of the French people and were forced to negotiate peace with France. With the Treaty of Calais, ratified in October 1360, the whole of the rich region of Aquitaine, Calais, and Guyenne in northern France were ceded to the English in exchange for Edward III's renunciation of his claims to the throne of France. In addition, a ransom of 4 million gold pieces was to be paid for the captive king. This was a deal that could be considered a success for the British. However, the Treaty of Calais failed to bring peace to both countries and internal hostilities continued.